The essence of evil is its refusal to think. I have often been asked why I chose to focus so deeply on what I termed the banality of evil, a concept that disturbed many, not because it exaggerated cruelty, but because it exposed how ordinary it could be. And I must clarify what I meant and why it remains vital to understand it today. You see, evil is not always committed by monsters. It is not always loud or violent or even driven by hatred. Far more often, it is quiet, bureaucratic, dutiful. It lives not in the heart of ideologues, but in the routines of the obedient. Those who abandon thought for procedure, conscience for conformity. When I wrote that the essence of evil is its refusal to think, I did not mean mere ignorance. I meant the willful abandonment of reflection, the conscious decision not to examine one's actions, one's complicity, or the meaning of one's role in a system. Thinking is not merely intellectual, it is moral. It is the activity by which we ask, is this right, and who does this harm? It is thinking that transforms us from instruments of power into beings of responsibility. In my study of Adolf Eichmann, I was struck not by sadism, but by the startling absence of thought. Eichmann was not a monster. He was not mad. He was a man who functioned within a system and who prided himself on following orders. He spoke in clichés. He relied on empty justifications. He never once stopped to consider the human beings his actions destroyed. He had, quite simply, abandoned the capacity to think. Today, I see this same refusal everywhere, in different forms, under new disguises. I see it in algorithmic systems that optimize for profit without regard for consequences, in leaders who value loyalty over truth, in citizens who retreat into echo chambers, afraid or unwilling to ask whether their beliefs hold weight. And perhaps most dangerously, I see it in a generation overwhelmed by information, but starving for reflection. Our technologies connect us, but they also distract us from the work of thought. We react, we repost, we retreat. Rarely do we stop and examine what we are complicit in. This, too, is a refusal to think. And it is dangerous, not because it breeds hate, but because it breeds indifference. And indifference, I assure you, is fertile ground for evil. Thought is what humanizes us. To think is to step outside of ideology, outside of blind obedience, and to examine the world as it is. It is to confront complexity, to wrestle with doubt, and to resist the seduction of certainty. In totalitarian regimes, thinking becomes dangerous precisely because it threatens the machinery of control. This is why totalitarianism always begins by attacking truth, punishing dissent, and reducing language to slogans. It knows what we must remember. That thought is the beginning of freedom. To those listening now, especially the young, I urge you not to look for easy answers. Do not surrender your capacity for judgment to any system, movement, or leader. Ask questions. Make distinctions. Speak in your own words, not borrowed ones. And above all, refuse to participate in systems that dehumanize. Thinking is not passive. It is an act of resistance. It is your obligation, not only to yourself, but to those who cannot speak, to those whose lives may be shaped by decisions you make or endorse without knowing it. The future will not be saved by those who shout the loudest, but by those who dare to pause and consider what their shouting might cause. My warning is simple. Where thinking stops, evil begins. Do not allow it to hide behind protocol or data or flags. Recognize it when you see people turning away from suffering, not out of malice, but convenience. Recognize it in yourself when you say, "This is not my problem." It is your problem. The world is your problem. And it will only be made better by people who choose to think. That is all I have ever wanted to say. Hannah Arendt.